Hello, and welcome to Regrets I've Had a Few. I'm Paul Hunter, Artistic Director of Told by an Idiot, and this is a podcast where I talk to friends and colleagues delving into what made them the person they are today.
Hello, and welcome. My guest this month is a director who explores theatre making as a radical form of community activism. She's Director of Public Acts at the National Theatre and Associate Artist at Company 3. Her work includes The Enormous Crocodile, Leeds Playhouse from Regent's Park, The Odyssey National Theatre, and Yoko Ono's Bells for Peace, Manchester International Festival. Welcome, Emily Lipp.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Paul.
And not at all. It's really nice to see you again. We spent some time together, which we might touch on earlier this year, which was very interesting and rewarding. I enjoyed it very much. But it's great that you're here. I won't reveal where you're sitting. I think I'll leave that to the imagination. That's going to pique people's interest.
Well, you have to now reveal it. We have to.
Oh, okay. I will reveal it. Emily is sitting in, I don't know his official title anymore. I want to say departing artistic director's seat at the National Theatre, Rufus's seat. Who knows where this would lead? Anyway, I won't dwell on that. I'll take you back, if I may, Emily, which I do with all my guests, to the beginning. And I wonder if you could remember the first or very early theatre experience that you saw, live performance. Was it with family? Was it with school? Or what might it have been? And what impact did it have?
So I don't know if this is the earliest, but it's one of my favourites. And it was a really early one because it's one of those ones that's clear and hazy enough to know that it was before I was holding proper, thorough memory of things. And it was a production of Andrew Lloyd Webber's Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. I was lucky enough to go and see some of these big musicals through my childhood. But this one was really special because my father is Malaysian Chinese, and he's one of 6, and all of his siblings still live in Malaysia. And we would have many happy memories going over there as children to connect with our family over there. And my family in Malaysia were obsessed with musicals and Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals. So we would spend late evenings singing into the night. We also had a hilarious moment. We were walking around a Buddhist temple in Penang one time, and I just remember my auntie and my uncle singing The King and I, not an actual music, but at the top of their lungs with all of us, and us being told off by the people in the temple for being too noisy. So this was a huge part of our joy, our shared joy and connection with our family over there, which was all quite unexpected in some ways. Anyway, we went to see this production, and it was very special, and it was very memorable to me because my uncle had come over. He only came over once, I think, he's been over twice, and this was the first time and only time in my childhood. Really big deal that he came over with my cousins, and one of my cousins, who can't have been more than about 7 or 8 at the time, maybe a little bit older, I was probably 5 or 6 and he was maybe 8 or 9. They were sat in front of me, and the lights were going down, and that for me is always the most electric and terrifying if it's my own show, but the most electric moment in any theatrical experience, because it's so full of possibility and it's so full of anticipation and hopefulness, and it's such a visceral moment. Anyway, and I remember sharing that with them, and they'd come from the other side of the world and never been to see this show in this way in the big shiny West End before, and it was very, very special. And I was there with I think my dad was there, and I was there with my siblings, and then sat behind them and feeling how much this meant, particularly to my youngest cousin who never experienced this before. Very, very special.
Wow, that's an amazing story as well, in the sense of the fact that the works of Andrew Lloyd Webber were quite significant within your family. It was not a random trip to the theatre. It obviously meant an enormous amount, given the fact they were singing it in Buddhist temples in Penang.
That's right. And we would... Yeah, many, many memories of us all sat around the table. 2 of my cousins do a particularly incredible rendition of Valjean and Javert's duet from Les Miserables. I mean, that
Wow.
works. Yeah, it's very big in my family.
Well, I have to, obviously, this leads me to ask the question, what did you offer at the family sing-along? What would have been your a number of choice, solo or duet, or what would it have been?
I think you're going to enjoy this answer. So I'm one of 4 siblings, Paul Hunter, and my 2 older sisters were absolutely amazing. My eldest sister particularly in like rallying us as kids. So my parents would just let us charge off, and we would spend hours in the worlds of our own imagination and her imagination, making plays together and recreating things that we'd seen, whether on television or whatever. And my big sister was very good at sort of corralling everyone and doing the directing. My second sister was a really, really amazing natural performer. My little brother was often relegated to I can't believe I'm sharing all of this, but I love it. Was relegated to being the dog, usually the dog.
And a good part, though. Good part, being the dog. Yeah,
my mum used to sometimes have to debut as a tree so she could hold the hand of the dog if he was.
Yes.
But then, Wanda, I was really. There's this one video that maybe says it best, where everyone is doing their thing and doing their thing very competently, and I am standing in the corner with a tray that has no explanation, and I am banging the tray and stamping my foot. And when everything else is happening and this flow of the scene is happening and things are starting and stopping and evolving and the story's happening, I am just there banging my tray. And I don't stop banging the tray. And I look incredibly serious about why I'm banging the tray. But the tray is serving no dramaturgical purpose. There is no reason as to why I'm there banging the tray. So I think, what am I saying? I think what I brought to the party was maybe very little at that stage.
Well, I don't know. Obviously, inevitably, given some of the things that interest us at Told by an Idiot, the repeated banging of the tray would be something I would certainly be open to exploring, I'm sure. But however, that's an early performance of yours, corralled by your obviously dynamic older sister. Did you go on to perform at school, or was performing something that interested you, or was banging the tray and that was it?
No, I did. I loved being in plays and was very lucky. They did, had some really great opportunities to be in plays at school. I was reflecting on this, and even though I was in the plays, I was often cast as the people who told other people what to do in the plays.
This is very Brechtian.
It's very Brechtian. So in James and the Giant Peach, I was the eagle-eyed spiker. And then in this very quite strange Victorian school play called The Burston Drum. Have you ever heard of this? I played one of the very strict Victorian teachers in primary school. And various other roles. So yes, I did really enjoy. I think the first part I played was the older school were doing a version of the Magic Flute, and they needed a load of cute kids to come and be animals. And I think I had my face painted like a fox and was a cute animal. But I did do plays. I was never particularly good, but I did.
And did desire or interest in performing, did that translate outside of school as well? Was there youth theatres or anything like that, or was it just a school thing?
No, I didn't do youth theatres. If anything, I did quite a lot of music.
Okay.
Music is a really important part of my work now still, I think, and I think I actually I was probably expressing myself more creatively through my music at that time. So the real interest in theatre was a slow burn, but came to the fore a bit later. I did a drama GCSE. It's so interesting because I remember the thing that most ignited me during that process was the bit where we started to understand and learn about devising, and I remember having a very clear sense we were devising something, and I just had a moment where I just went, I know which side of this I'd rather be on, and I'd really love to be the person on that side that's helping to craft and shape and hold people and grow where this can grow and lead where this can grow, rather than being the person that's being looked at and didn't. Yeah.
But it's interesting you say that about the GCSE and the discovery of devising, and then obviously the journey towards the work that you've ended up making, and obviously you know this, and I'm passionate about the notion that all the best theatre is an act of collaboration, and your work is writ large the notion of what it means to collaborate. And I suppose that sense of, rather than a play being the vision of one person that's interpreting it, the notion of devising and go, hey, we're all doing this and we're all part of this kind of. Was that the beginnings of this notion of collaboration, or did you not even think about that really? You just enjoy being part of a team and so?
Yeah, I think that was probably a few steps more profound than I was at the time. I don't think I joined all of those dots, but maybe you're right on on more of a subconscious level. And absolutely, what you say is true. I think the theatre that I've always been most drawn to as a maker and as an audience member, though I really respect and love other tastes and styles, but is work that feels work that's operating on a very sensory and a visceral level, and work that feels like it's pulling together all different forms of making and creating, whether that is music and movement, or and bending and shaping and using story in an unusual way or a less conventional way. I was never most drawn to, and I don't use this word in a derogatory way at all, but I wasn't most drawn to more conventionally performed and delivered play texts. Yeah.
And the journey towards directing, did you go to university or did you go to study directing, or in any shape or form?
No, I didn't. I directed some shows at university, and that was such a joy, and that was very formative, getting to mess around. I always think it's true for lots of people, isn't it? When you don't know anything, you're often at your freest and your best. I didn't know what on earth I was doing, and it was incredibly fun. The first thing I directed was I just went and pulled a load of things off the shelf because I thought, oh, come on. I also wasn't getting cast in anything. Classic. Wasn't getting cast in anything. It was like, screw this. I've always wanted to have a go at doing it myself. Went and pulled a load of books off the drama section of a bookshop and found Under Milk Wood and went, second, like, this feels like an invitation. You know, this is so exciting, and it feels like there's space for me within this to imagine and to interpret and world build. I think that's a real theme of the work that I'm most interested in making, to world build around these words as a starting offer. And I suppose, it's interesting you're talking about devising, because that really is a text where you feel like you're in real direct collaboration with Dylan Thomas, I think, because it is not clear how you're going to realise that world and his language. I haven't talked about it for ages, but in live space with a live audience. So I did that, and then and it felt great being able to be in that space of working very collaboratively with a cast of actors, but also being the person who was ultimately whittling and steering the ship gently. Yeah.
Did you feel, that's interesting, because as you say, that there's, I don't know it terribly well, but when I think of Under Milkwood, it am I right that it says a play for voices?
Yes, I think you are. Yeah, you are. You're right.
Somewhere that.
Yeah.
And I think it's very interesting that notion, because I did, of course, I was an astonishing poet and everything, so I think of the voice. But it's interesting when you have that, and then you think about the visual and how that manifests itself in the kind of visual storytelling. So as you go through your university time, directing and everything, did you then feel, oh, I need to go and study directing specifically, or did you just go on to make work and get going, sort of thing?
I think because two things were happening, and one was a real falling really in love with this idea of making theatre that connected right back to those early formative experiences I had of feeling the prickle on my neck as the lights went down and a big show in the West End or whatever it was we were seeing. And then the other was a real commitment to and passion for social justice work. And sure. I could see really clearly the change that I wanted to make in the world. And then I wanted to work out how theatre could be the means by which I did that. So I have a thing that I love, and I have a change that I want to affect, and I want to try and understand how these two things can come together. So actually, when I left university, my main mission was to understand who was sitting and the companies that were sitting in the middle of that Venn diagram. And I came across, I went to Edinburgh once, and I remember seeing the Chicken Shed show. And then went to see another of their shows back in the Enfield home, and the feeling of sitting there watching 400 young people emerging on stage to do this retelling of A Midsummer Night's Dream in an incredibly radically inclusive way. an intergenerational company because they don't just work with young people, of course, was incredibly eye-opening. And I think that was probably the first example of seeing a piece of theatre that felt like this is what community can look like on stage. And this is how the ideas of social justice and a community that centres around celebrating its compassion and its care and its empathy more than its competitiveness or its difference, or its negatively held difference. This is what this can be and this is what this can look like. And so I went in search of opportunities to then throw myself into as many different social change contexts and worked with lots of different grassroots community organisations and arts organisations and theatre organisations that were stepping into those worlds and delivering really quality, brilliant work in those worlds. And then there came a point where I went, hang on a second, I really need to build the theatre muscle now too, because it's not good enough for me to just learn. I wanted to learn how to work with as many people as possible in as many different community settings as possible. But then I knew if I want to make theatre, and if my whole thesis is that the theatre, the quality of the theatre can and must be excellent to affect the change, because unless we're all there being given the chance to be magnificent, nobody's going to have this ultimate possible, no one's going to see their ultimate and their maximum possibility as an individual or as part of a collective. I've got to go and really build those theatre making muscles.
And where did you go?
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting talking to you from Rufus Norris's office. I feel like we have to declare that Rufus is away, which is why I'm getting to use his office. He's not here as well. I had done a bit of assisting, but I think my real step up, was lucky enough to do the National Theatre Directors course, which is an incredible 2 weeks of masterclasses, which really blew my mind. And then I got a job staff directing on Rufus's Behind the Beautiful Forevers, and then had another staff directing gig with him, and started to those were two really big formative training moments. But alongside that, had been doing bits of going on whatever. I was part of the Young Vic Genesis Directors Programme. I was doing as many workshops and things that I could do with them. They ran so many brilliant free classes. They did. I did it's nice reflecting back on it. I did a 3-day workshop with David Harradine from Phoebe.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Which is one of the really formative ones. And because I remember sitting there and him saying, we make work that's actually much more about atmosphere and tone and feeling. And me feeling permitted, like a permission for the first time, that the kind of work that I felt like I wanted to make was work that was legitimate. And that other people, really great people like him, were saying that's what we do too. And we start with pictures and images and senses rather than words on a page. Anyway, getting distracted. But yes, I was sort of curating for myself a collection of experiences that I hoped would both build my my context and understanding of the social sector, and would build my muscles as a theatre director. And it was opportunities like the National Theatre Directors course lecture, and then meeting Rufus. And a very formative moment I haven't talked about, which was meeting Ned Glazier from Islington Community Theatre, which is now an amazing company called Company 3, and understanding how you could bring these worlds together. That has led me ultimately to where I am now, I think.
That's a really fascinating journey. And were you at the same time, not necessarily consciously, as you were going on this journey, were you also kind of gathering collaborators along the way? People who you were connecting to, and that you would carry on to the next thing together? Or how did your kind of collaborators form around you, or you with them?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, Ned and I collaborated on several things together, and we made Brainstorm together, which is one of the pieces of work that I'm proudest of, I think. And it took several years to make. It's a piece about adolescent neuroscience that we made with 10 teenagers. Initially made with about 30 teenagers from our company. And it now has a life of its own. We published a version of it, which many, many youth theatres have interpreted in their own way all over the world, which is so humbling. Yeah, so we worked together a bit, having met through that company, and realised we had really aligned values. And I learned so much from Ned's brilliant practice and his advocacy, and the way that he was able to strive for this incredible artistic quality and bringing together really top quality artists whilst dedicating the practice to this superbly exciting, dynamic, committed group of young people. But the main holding of the space, the reason we were all there to make theatre and to unite under that shared purpose was so that we could create a safe and connected environment full of belonging and discovery for these young people in their lives. And then I met, and Chris Bush is another one of we met through, Chris Bush was working at Sheffield People's Theatre and had written the incredible Mysteries play there, huge, amazing community show. And the wonderful Lindsay Turner connected Chris and I really early on when I was starting to think about the piece of the puzzle I haven't explained is that Rufus invited me to spend, I got a residency here shortly after Brainstorm when Rufus took over the building, and the provocation was come and spend a couple of years here growing your own practice and understanding how really high quality participatory work with deep, meaningful social impact can cut right through the heart of who the National Theatre is. And Lindsay connected Chris and I around that time as we were starting to think about what we might grow in public acts, and the collaboration with Chris and then Jim Fortune, our dear mutual friend. Those collaborators came on board at the start of that journey and have travelled really since.
And that's one of the things that culminated in was your version of the Odyssey. Is that right?
That's right. Yes. Last year we did, as the 5th anniversary of the project, we did our biggest, wildest, zaniest project yet, where we took, which was greenlit during COVID, which still floors me actually, the tenacity and the faith and the incredibly radical commitment to our values that was shown by the team here who were saying, yes, go for it, let's make that happen at such a time. So we told the story of the Odyssey in 5 parts with 5 different communities and artists local to them across the country. And the first 4 episodes happened. So the first 4 episodes happened in Stoke-on-Trent by the brilliant Restoke Theatre Company in
Restoke, amazing.
Wonderful, amazing. Restoke.
Yeah, we've worked with Restoke. They're brilliant.
Amazing.
They're brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely amazing.
Isn't that building amazing where they're based?
It's incredible.
Benton, it's extraordinary.
They're so great.
And the best cafe. The food is amazing in that cafe.
Great dog. The best cafe.
Sorry.
No, it's a great Restoke tangent. And then we went to, the second part was in a cast in Doncaster, another amazingly inspiring organisation who we've all worked with for a couple of years. And then the third part was in Trowbridge Town Hall down in the southwest.
Oh yeah, Wiltshire.
Directed by the one and only Jessie Jones. Incredible.
Oh, brilliant.
And then we did the 4th part up in Sunderland, where we're still working now, which is wonderful. And then I directed the 5th part back here at the National with 160 company members who came from all of those different places. And we'd done our first show for public acts was Pericles, which we did with 225 people from across London in the Olivier. And I said to Rufus, if we're coming back, I really want us to come and do a show here again. But if we're going to do another public act show here, it's got to be a national community on that stage. And so we sort of about making that happen. And I had the most incredible team of people to help make that.
No, it sounds extraordinary. And I was interested. I was watching a bit of a part of my research for our chat. I was watching an interview with you, and I was interested where you said initially you weren't so keen on the idea of the Odyssey, I suppose, because it's such a classic kind of thing. And you said we went right away from it initially, going, we don't want to do this. It's done a lot, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually you talk about returning to it. It's interesting, isn't it, when we move away from something for whatever reason, but then somehow we find, I suppose, like the Odyssey itself, we find our way back to it.
Yeah. And I think we were cooking it up during COVID, me and Nina Steiger and Chris Bush and Jim on separate, Zoom calls. And we just couldn't get away from the fact that everybody was in such a moment of reflection on the idea of resilience and what it took for communities and individuals to be resilient and to understand who we are separately and together. And crossing distance and overcoming and endurance and all of these things. And Odysseus being the hero who is considered to be the most, resilient, the most enduring. We just kept coming back and going, hang on a second, this is the story for now. And
it resonates.
It really
for a reason.
It really resonates for a reason. And I think we're always looking in we talk a lot with the project about the idea of unity through radical joy. And I think joy is often spoken about as a soft and squishy thing, but actually it's a deeply powerful force. And Brené Brown, who's one of my favorite thinkers, she talks about joy as engendering belonging. So for me, joy is something that is a really robust, muscular force in the world and a power in the world that is worth giving yourself to and dedicating yourself to. Anyway, we like to find work that can hold joy and can hold our culture of care and the culture of inclusion and joy that we work within. But that also, of course, if you make space for joy, you make space and capacity for sadness and for grief and for loss and for all of the other things. And the Odyssey as a story holds great darkness. It holds huge loss, and it's that emotional journey of somebody going through huge loss, but coming back to themselves and coming back to their home. And ultimately, in our version, in Chris's beautiful adaptation, a mother coming back to her son was something that we never questioned. Once we'd committed to it, it always felt like the right story for that moment.
It's spending a very brief time for a week in a room with you and Chris. I think their writing is so wonderfully human and moving, and I can see exactly why you would be drawn to collaborating around it. Given how extraordinary it sounds, and this might sound a strange question, and you don't strike me as someone who has a lot of regrets, but was there anything that you wanted to achieve as part of that project that you couldn't? And do you have any regrets around that, or was it's just much bigger than that, than stuff that didn't make it to the end?
With the Odyssey specifically?
Yeah.
I think the honest answer with that particular project, and I have plenty of regrets with other projects, but with that particular one, the tidal wave of support and expertise and love and generosity and determination that we were met with at every stage from every person who chose to jump on board and take the massive leap of faith to decide that this impossible thing was going to be something we were going to make possible together. I think that really was the defining mode. And so, and we all spent a lot of time during that project, and still do now, on reflecting back on it. And of course, not everything was perfect. There were loads of learnings within there. But we spent a lot of time collectively as this huge team of people from across the country, feeling really, really humbled and amazed that we were getting to do this thing, and that we were connecting with this, just, Restoke being one example, Claire and Paul from Restoke, our amazing community members all over the country. It was the first time I got to collaborate with the extraordinary Dan Canham, who's become one of my most important collaborators and friends, choreographer, movement director, who I know you know well, and who I'm lucky enough to be making several other things with. It was just and the professional actors who we got to work with, Sharon Duncan Brewster, Zubin,
Taryn Callender,
Amy Booth Steele, this incredible group of humans pulling in the same direction, committing to these big ideas of hope and radical inclusion and joy, and how we can celebrate and provoke ideas about who we are as individuals and communities when we come together through the shared purpose of making an amazing piece of theatre together and telling a story of home and belonging. I think that this probably sounds like a very romantic view back on it all, but it really was the case that during it, we just kept pinching ourselves and going, I can't believe we're all lucky enough to be able to be doing this with this group of people. And that's nothing to do with me and everything to do with the people that we manage.
Well, I think it has a little bit to do with you. The girl that stood in the corner banging the tin tray repeatedly was clearly on to something. And I think it takes an enormous amount of courage, skill, and generosity to bring something together on the scale and depth that you have. So you should take credit for that. That is for sure. It's been really lovely chatting, Emily. I hope you like your new office that you're now squatting in.
It's feeling very comfortable, Rufus. I'm just...
You look very relaxed there. I always end these chats with a round of quick fire questions.
Okay.
You don't need to think about. You just say the first thing that comes into your head in response to these questions, Emily. On the subject of the Odyssey, we start with myths. Orpheus and Eurydice, or Cupid and Psyche?
Orpheus and Eurydice every time.
Have you seen a movie called A Portrait of a Lady on Fire?
No, but I've heard of it.
You should. That's a brilliant version of that myth. Actually, it's a wonderful film. Anyway, moving on. Next question: Carol Churchill or Sarah Kane?
Oh, I'm not supposed to tell you why, but Carol Churchill.
Okay. Movies: My Neighbor Totoro or Toy Story?
This is terrible. I haven't seen Totoro, so Toy Story.
Well, yes, great. Toy Story is brilliant. No worries.
Studio Ghibli. Otherwise,
karaoke or pub quiz?
This is a very relevant question from you, Paul Hunter, given what we were doing in the room together. Karaoke.
What would your summer choice be?
Actually, sorry, no, not karaoke. For myself,
pub quiz.
Pub quiz for myself, but as a form, karaoke.
Karaoke, pub quiz, very good. London or Paris?
London. Born and bred.
The Scarecrow or the Cowardly Lion?
Oh, great question. Scarecrow was always my favourite in that film.
Oh, I see. I was always Cowardly Lion because I thought the part is so wonderful. If anyone's listening, Lady Gaga or Beyonce?
Beyonce.
Yeah. Emily, it's been an absolute joy. Let's meet for a glass of something or a coffee or something at some point and chat more. Have a lovely day.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Dear listeners, if you've enjoyed this idiot podcast, please spread the word